The city knew his name, but no one said it loudly. He was a man people feared without needing to see. In his early 30s, powerful, wealthy, and untouchable, he controlled everything around him with quiet authority. His presence alone could silence a room. His eyes, cold, sharp, unreadable, made even the strongest men lower their gaze. He did not shout. He did not argue. He did not explain himself. He simply decided, and things happened. In his world, people obeyed or disappeared. But there was something more disturbing about him than his power. He never smiled. Not once. His mansion stood at the edge of the city, large and beautiful, but empty in a way that money could not fix. The walls were clean, the floor shining, the furniture expensive, but there was no warmth, no laughter, no life. Servants moved quietly, careful not to make mistakes. Guards stood outside, always alert. Everything was perfect and completely lifeless. He walked through the halls every morning in silence. No greetings, no reactions, no emotions. It had not always been like this. There was a time when he smiled, a time when his house had laughter, a time when he had a reason to live beyond power. But that time ended in one night. A car accident. It was sudden, violent, final. His wife and his mother.
Gone. Just like that.
The news had spread quickly, but no one truly understood what it did to him. People expected anger,
Rage.
revenge. But instead, he became empty. Not broken.
Not weak.
Just empty. From that day, something inside him shut down completely. He stopped smiling.
He stopped laughing.
He stopped feeling. Doctors were called. The best in the country. They examined him, spoke to him, tried to reach him. Nothing. Therapists spent hours asking questions. He gave short answers, cold answers, useless answers. His friends tried in their own ways. They took him out, brought people around him, tried to remind him of who he used to be. Nothing worked. It was like trying to wake someone who had already left. Years passed, and he remained the same, unchanged, untouched, unreachable. That morning felt like every other morning. He sat in the back of his black car, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His posture was straight, his face calm, his eyes staring ahead with no expression. The driver focused on the road, careful not to make any mistakes. The bodyguard sat in front, alert, watching everything. Inside the car, there was only silence. Heavy silence. The kind that made people uncomfortable. The kind that reminded you something wasn't right. The car moved smoothly through the city streets, passing buildings, shops, people going about their normal lives. None of it mattered to him. He wasn't looking at anything. He wasn't thinking about anything. He was simply there. Then, something unusual caught his attention. At first, it was just movement by the roadside. A figure. He turned his head slightly, and that was when he saw her. A woman, standing by the road. Her clothes were old and worn. Her hair was not properly kept. Her feet were bare against the rough ground. She was clearly homeless. But that wasn't what stood out. She was dancing. Not carefully. Not slowly. Freely. Her arms moved without control. Her body followed no pattern. It wasn't graceful in the way trained dancers moved. It was raw.
Wild.
Almost strange. She was laughing too. Laughing to herself. Like nothing in the world mattered. Like she had no pain. Like she had no past. People passed her without stopping. Some looked at her with confusion. Others ignored her completely.
To them.
She looked crazy. But he kept watching. His eyes didn't move away. Something about her didn't make sense. How could someone with nothing look so free? How could someone so broken look so alive? The car slowed slightly as they passed. And then, something happened. Something no one inside that car had ever seen before.
A sound.
Soft at first. Then louder. Then clear. He laughed. Not a small reaction. Not a forced smile. A real laugh.
Deep.
Unexpected.
Alive.
The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His eyes widened. The bodyguard turned quickly, his face filled with shock. Neither of them spoke. They couldn't, because they knew what this meant. This had not happened in years. The man who had forgotten how to feel, the man who had buried everything inside him, was laughing. The car continued moving forward, but something had already changed. Something small, something quiet, something dangerous. Because for the first time, since he buried his world, something inside him moved. People saw her every day, but no one really saw her. To them, she was just another homeless woman by the roadside. Someone to ignore. Someone to laugh at. Someone who didn't matter. They called her names. Crazy girl. Street dancer. Something is wrong with her. Some people even stopped to watch her, not because they cared, but because they wanted something to laugh at. They would stand at a distance, whispering, smiling in a way that was not kind. But she never argued. She never chased them away. She never tried to explain herself. She simply kept dancing. Her name was Lila, and she was not insane. Not even close. If anything, she was stronger than most of the people watching her. Her clothes were old and worn, patched in different places. Her hair was rough and sometimes messy. Her feet were always bare, touching the hot ground, the dust, the stones. Life had not been kind to her, but her eyes still carried something. Something alive. Something unbroken. There was a time when her life was normal. A small home. A family that laughed. A mother who sang while cooking. A father who worked hard but always came back with a smile. It wasn't a rich life, but it was enough. Until everything changed. It didn't happen slowly. It happened all at once.
Loss. Pain.
Silence. In a short time, she lost the people who gave her a reason to wake up every day. The home she knew disappeared. The life she understood was gone. She tried to hold on. She tried to survive the normal way. But the world outside was not gentle. No money. No support. No one willing to help. Every door closed. Every opportunity disappeared before it could begin. Step by step, life pushed her to the streets. At first, it broke her.
She cried.
She begged. She tried to ask for help, but people avoided her, ignored her, treated her like she didn't exist. And slowly, she understood something. If she stayed in that pain, it would destroy her completely. So one day, she made a choice. A strange one. A different one. Instead of sitting and crying, she stood up and started dancing. Not because she had music. Not because she wanted attention. But because it helped her breathe. When she danced, she didn't feel the hunger. When she danced, she didn't hear the insults. When she danced, she didn't remember everything she lost. For those few moments, she was free. And that freedom mattered more than anything. So she kept doing it. Every day. No matter who laughed. No matter who ignored her. No matter who judged her. She refused to break. While the world saw madness, she was simply surviving the only way she knew how. Across the city, in a place filled with power and silence, someone else couldn't forget her. The Mafia boss. He sat in his office, surrounded by people, decisions, and control. Men spoke in front of him, explaining deals, problems, plans. He listened. He responded. Everything moved the way it always did.
Perfect.
Efficient.
Cold.
But his mind was not there. It kept going back to the same moment. The roadside. The movement. The laughter. Her. He didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. He had seen many people suffer. He had seen pain in different forms.
Fear.
Desperation.
Loss.
But what he saw in her was not any of those things. Or maybe it was all of them, but changed into something else. Something he couldn't explain. It wasn't attraction. He had seen beauty before. That was not what this was. It wasn't pity. He didn't feel sorry for her. He didn't even think of helping her. It was something deeper. Something unfamiliar. Something uncomfortable. Something that disturbed the emptiness inside him. For the first time in years, his mind refused to stay quiet. He leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression still calm, still unreadable. But inside, something was moving. That image of her dancing replayed again and again. The way she laughed. The way she moved without fear. The way she looked like she had nothing, yet acted like she had everything. It didn't make sense to him. And that was exactly why. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The next day, he didn't go straight to the office. That alone was unusual. His schedule was always precise. Every movement planned. Every minute accounted for. Nothing was left to chance. But that morning, he changed his route. The black car moved through the city like always, smooth and controlled. The driver didn't ask questions. He had learned long ago that silence was safer. The bodyguard sat in front, alert as ever. Inside the car, the air felt the same. Quiet.
Cold. Heavy.
But this time, there was something different. The Mafia boss was not staring ahead blankly like before. He was waiting. They reached the same road. The same spot. The driver slowed slightly, as if he already understood what his boss wanted without being told. And there she was. Exactly where she had been the day before. The homeless woman. Barefoot. Wearing the same worn clothes.
Dancing.
Like nothing in the world mattered. Her arms moved freely, her body turning without pattern, her laughter light and careless. There was no music, no audience, no reason that made sense. And yet, she danced like she was free. The car came to a stop this time. No one spoke. The Mafia boss didn't say anything. He simply watched. Longer than before.
Carefully. Closely.
Not just the movement, but her. The way her face softened when she spun. The way her eyes closed for a second, like she was somewhere else entirely. The way her smile didn't look forced. It wasn't fake. It wasn't for attention. It was real. Something about that disturbed him. Not because it was wrong, but because he didn't understand it. How could someone like her look like that? How could someone with nothing behave like they had everything? Minutes passed. The road continued moving around them.
Cars drove by.
People walked past, some glancing briefly, some ignoring completely. But inside that car, time felt still. The driver glanced at the mirror once. Careful, unsure. The bodyguard remained alert, but even he couldn't ignore what was happening. Because this wasn't normal. Not for their boss. Not for a man like him. Then, the car door opened.
Slowly.
The sound alone was enough to shift the atmosphere. People nearby noticed immediately. A few stepped back without thinking. Some whispered quietly, because they recognized him. And when people recognized him, they made space. The Mafia boss stepped out of the car. His shoes touched the ground with calm confidence. His posture straight. His face once again unreadable. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous. The bodyguard quickly stepped out as well, scanning the area, his eyes sharp. The driver stayed in place, watching through the mirror. The tension in the air changed instantly. People moved further away. No one wanted to be close. No one wanted trouble. But the woman.
She was still dancing.
She hadn't stopped. Not immediately. Not even when he stepped out. It was strange. Almost impossible. Because most people, when they saw him, reacted. They froze. They panicked. They avoided him. But she didn't. Not at first. She continued moving for a few more seconds, lost in her own world. Her laughter soft, her steps light against the ground. Then slowly,
she stopped.
Not because she was afraid.
Not because she was forced to.
But because she chose to. She turned her head and looked at him. Their eyes met. And for a moment, everything else faded. She didn't step back. She didn't lower her eyes. She didn't look confused or scared. She simply looked at him.
Calm.
As if he was just another person standing there. As if she didn't see the power, the danger, the weight that followed him everywhere. The people watching from a distance held their breath. They expected something.
Fear.
Panic. A mistake. But none of it came. The Mafia boss stood in front of her, studying her the same way he had from the car.
Closer now. Clearer now.
And what he saw was exactly the same. No fear. No desperation. No need to impress. Just a quiet, steady calm. It didn't make sense. And that made it even harder to ignore. For the first time in years, Someone was standing in front of him, without reacting to who he was. The silence between them did not feel normal. People stood at a distance, watching carefully. Some whispered. Some pretended not to look. But everyone was paying attention, because they knew who he was. And they knew this moment could turn dangerous at any second. The Mafia boss stood in front of her, his expression calm, his eyes fixed on her face. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't angry. He was simply observing. She stood barefoot on the rough ground, her breathing slightly uneven from dancing, but her posture relaxed. There was no tension in her shoulders, no fear in her eyes, just calm. That alone made the moment feel strange. The bodyguard stayed a few steps behind, alert, ready to act if needed. His eyes moved from the crowd to the woman and back again. The driver remained inside the car, watching through the mirror, his heart beating a little faster than usual. No one spoke. Then, the Mafia boss finally did.
His voice was low,
Controlled.
direct.
Dance for me, he said. There was no hesitation in his tone. No softness. Just a simple command. Then he added, I'll pay you anything you want. The words hung in the air. People nearby exchanged quick looks. Some of them were already thinking the same thing. She had just been given a chance most people would beg for. Money, security, opportunity. From a man like him, that offer could change a life instantly. All she had to do
Was say yes.
for a moment.
She didn't respond.
She just looked at him, not confused, not excited, just thinking. Then, she laughed.
Soft, light, real.
It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't disrespectful. But it was enough to shock everyone watching. The bodyguard's eyes narrowed slightly. The driver straightened in his seat. And even the people in the distance stopped whispering. Because no one laughed in front of him. No one.
But she did.
And she didn't look like she was mocking him. She didn't look like she was trying to challenge him. It was just natural. Like she had heard something simple. Something ordinary. The Mafia boss did not react immediately. He didn't show anger. He didn't raise his voice. But something shifted slightly in his gaze. Not rage. Curiosity. Why are you laughing? He asked calmly. She tilted her head a little, her expression still relaxed. Then she answered. I don't dance for money. The words were simple, but they hit harder than anyone expected. For a second, no one moved, because it didn't make sense. Everyone knew her situation. Everyone could see it. She had nothing. No proper clothes. No home. No shoes. No protection. And yet, she was refusing money. From him. The bodyguard frowned slightly. The driver blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. Even the people watching couldn't understand it. Anyone else would have accepted immediately. Anyone else would have begged for more. But she didn't. She stood there, calm, as if what she said was completely normal. The Mafia boss looked at her more carefully now. Not with power. Not with control. But with interest. Because this was new. Different. Unexpected. Then why do you dance? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. For a brief second, her eyes softened, like she was remembering something far away. Then she said quietly, because it keeps me alive. There was no drama in her voice. No sadness. Just truth. The kind of truth that didn't need explanation. The kind that stayed in the air longer than words should. The Mafia boss said nothing for a moment. But something inside him shifted again.
Slightly.
Silently. Then he spoke once more. This time his tone was the same, but the meaning felt different. What do you want then?
She didn't hesitate this time.
She looked at him directly and said, Food. Just that. No long request. No conditions. No greed. Just food. The simplicity of it made everything else feel heavy. Money could buy anything. But she didn't ask for it. She didn't even seem to care about it. The bodyguard looked at his boss, waiting for a reaction. The people watching leaned slightly forward, curious about what would happen next. The Mafia boss held her gaze for a few seconds. Then, he nodded.
Fine, he said.
If that's what you want, you'll have it. His voice remained calm, controlled. But there was something new in it now. Not authority,
Interest.
She gave a small nod in return. No excitement. No relief. Just acceptance. And for the first time, their strange agreement was made. Not built on power. Not built on fear. But on something far more unusual. Understanding. The arrangement started quietly. No announcement. No attention. Just a simple decision that slowly became a routine. Every day, at almost the same time she came, not to the main mansion. That was never an option. A man like him did not bring strangers into his personal space, no matter how harmless they looked. Security was strict. Every movement was controlled. Every risk was calculated. Instead, a private place was arranged. A quiet building, owned by him but rarely used.
Clean.
Empty. Safe. Guards were placed outside, not too close, but close enough to react if anything went wrong. Inside, there was nothing unnecessary.
Just space.
Open floor. Silence. And him. The first time she entered, she looked around calmly. No shock. No wide eyes. No questions about the place or the security. She simply stepped inside like it didn't matter. Like it was just another place to stand. He was already there, seated, watching. No greeting. No explanation. He didn't need them. She didn't expect them. For a moment, they both stayed still. Then, she started dancing. Just like she always did. No music. No preparation. No performance for approval. Her body moved freely, her steps light, her arms flowing without control. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't trained. But it was real. And he watched. The first day, nothing happened. No smile. No laughter. No visible reaction. He sat there, his face calm, his expression unchanged. Cold.
Still.
But he didn't stop her. He didn't interrupt. He didn't leave. He stayed until she finished. Then he nodded slightly. The food was brought. She ate quietly. And then she left. No extra words. No questions. That was how it began. The next day, she came again.
And the next. And the next.
Each day, the same pattern. She entered. She danced.
He watched. She ate.
She left. Simple. Consistent. But something inside that routine slowly started changing. At first, it was too small to notice. Too quiet. Too controlled. A slight shift in his posture. A longer gaze. A brief pause before looking away. Then, a reaction. Not a smile, but something close. A small movement in his face that didn't completely disappear. He didn't notice it himself, but others did. The bodyguard, who always stayed nearby, began to observe carefully. He had seen his boss in every state, angry, calm, dangerous, but never like this. Not softer. The staff who worked around the private building also noticed changes. His anger reduced. Before, small mistakes could lead to serious consequences. His patience was thin. His tolerance almost non-existent. But now, he paused more. He reacted less. Sometimes he didn't react at all. It confused them. It made them careful, in a different way. Because they didn't understand what was happening. And when people didn't understand him, they became more afraid. Days turned into weeks. The routine continued. She danced the same way.
Free.
Uncontrolled.
Alive.
He watched the same way. Silent. Still. Observing. But inside him, something was shifting. Slowly. Quietly. Dangerously. His mind began to hold on to moments. The way she closed her eyes when she turned. The way she smiled without reason. The way she moved like the world didn't exist. It stayed with him, even after she left, even when he returned to his normal life. In meetings, in conversations, in silence. She was there.
And he didn't understand why.
It wasn't attraction. He had seen beauty before. That was not it. It wasn't pity. He didn't feel sorry for her. That wasn't it either. It wasn't control. He wasn't trying to change her. He didn't even give instructions. So what was it?
He didn't know.
And that bothered him, because he was a man who understood everything around him.
People. Power.
Fear. Decisions. Nothing confused him. Nothing stayed unanswered. But this made no sense. Why did her presence calm something inside him? Why did her movements stay in his mind? Why did he feel different, even in small ways? He leaned back in his chair one evening after she left, his eyes fixed on the empty space where she had been dancing. The room was silent again. Cold again. But not completely. Not like before. Something was still there. Something he couldn't see. Something he couldn't control. And for the first time in years, he was experiencing something he couldn't explain. The routine continued, but something had changed. It was no longer just about watching her dance. The Mafia boss had started to notice more than her movements. He noticed her pauses. The way her expression shifted for a brief second when she thought no one was looking. The quiet moments between her laughter. And slowly, he began to wonder, not about what she did, but about who she was. One evening, after she finished dancing, the room fell into its usual silence. She stopped, breathing lightly, and sat down on the floor like she always did. The food was brought in. Simple. Enough. She began to eat quietly. He watched her for a moment longer than usual. Then, he spoke. "Why do you do it?" His voice was calm, but the question felt heavier than it sounded. The space felt different. Empty in a way it hadn't felt before. Then he stood again. Faster this time. He walked outside.
"Find her," he said.
His voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something unfamiliar. The bodyguard nodded immediately. Men were sent out. The streets were checked. The places she usually stayed were searched. People were questioned. Some ignored them. Some answered quickly. Some were too afraid to lie. The hours passed. And for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Restlessness. He couldn't sit still. He moved from one place to another, his mind no longer quiet. That image of her, dancing, laughing, alive. It wouldn't leave him. And now, she was gone. It didn't make sense. And that made it worse. Then, the call came. The bodyguard stepped closer. "We found something," he said. The Mafia boss turned immediately. "What?" "There was trouble," the bodyguard replied. "Some men, they harassed people in that area last night. Street people." The air around him shifted. "Where is she?" he asked. The bodyguard hesitated for a second, then answered. "They said she was there." That was enough. He didn't wait. He moved toward the car immediately. No instructions. No delay. The driver started the engine before he even sat down. The car moved fast through the city, cutting through traffic without hesitation. Inside the car, there was no silence anymore. Something had replaced it. Something sharp. Something heavy. They reached a narrow part of the city, the kind of place people avoided. Broken structures. Dim corners. Forgotten spaces. The car stopped. He stepped out immediately. No hesitation. No fear. The bodyguard followed closely. They walked quickly, guided by someone who pointed toward a small, abandoned building. "She's inside," the man said quietly. He didn't wait for anything else. He walked in. The smell hit first. Damp. Old. Unclean. Then, he saw her. She was lying on the ground. Still. Too still. Her clothes were torn in places. Her face carried marks. Bruises. Dirt. Her hair scattered. Her body weak. Broken. For a second, he froze. Not because he didn't understand, but because he did. Too clearly. This wasn't dancing. This wasn't freedom. This was what the world had done to her. And something inside him reacted, but not the way anyone would expect. Not anger. Not rage. Not violence. Panic. Real. Sharp. Uncontrolled. He moved toward her quickly and dropped to his knees beside her. "Hey," he said, his voice lower now, different. Not cold. Not distant. Urgent. She didn't respond immediately. Her breathing was weak. Slow. He reached out, his hand stopping for a brief second before touching her shoulder gently. "Look at me," he said. This time, her eyes moved slightly. Slowly opening. Barely. She saw him. And for a moment, she tried to smile. Even in that condition. Even like that. And that broke something inside him. Not loudly, not visibly,
but deeply.
because for the first time, he wasn't afraid of losing power. He wasn't afraid of enemies. He wasn't afraid of anything he understood. He was afraid of losing her. He didn't take her to his mansion. That would have been too much, too sudden, too dangerous for her and for him. Instead, he took her somewhere quiet, a smaller, private house he owned on the edge of the city. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, safe, and controlled. Only a few trusted staff were allowed in. No noise, no crowd, no unnecessary attention. She was carried inside carefully. A doctor was already waiting. Not one of those who asked too many questions, just someone skilled, quiet, and professional. Her injuries were treated slowly.
Bruises cleaned.
Cuts covered. Her body was weak, but she was alive. That was enough.
For now.
He stood at a distance at first, watching everything. Silent. Still. But different. Not cold like before. Present. That was the difference. For the first time, he wasn't just observing from far away. He was there. The first few days were quiet. She slept a lot. Her body needed it. Sometimes she woke up, confused, weak, trying to understand where she was. And every time, someone was there. Food was given, but not too much at once. Warm water, clean clothes. Nothing expensive, nothing overwhelming.
Just care.
Simple, careful,
real.
He didn't speak to her much in those days. He came in sometimes, stood by the door, watched for a moment, then left. But his presence was steady, constant, like he was making sure she didn't disappear again. As she got stronger, she started sitting up more, walking slowly, speaking a little. Her voice was still soft, but it carried the same calm it always had. One evening, she found him standing near the window, looking outside, quiet as usual. She walked closer, her steps slow but steady. "You brought me here," she said. Not a question. A statement. He turned slightly. "Yes." She nodded. No surprise. No confusion. Just acceptance. Then she said, "Thank you." He didn't respond immediately. Not because he didn't hear her, but because he didn't know what to say. Gratitude was not something he was used to receiving. He gave a small nod instead. That was enough. Days passed. She recovered more. And slowly, he started changing. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But in small ways. He stayed longer in the room. Sometimes sat down. Sometimes spoke first. And then, one day it happened. She was standing in the middle of the room. Not fully strong yet, but steady enough. She looked around. Then at him.
"Can I?" she asked.
He didn't need to ask what she meant. He nodded. She took a small step back, closed her eyes for a second, and then she started dancing again. Not like before. Not wild. Not fast. Gentler. Slower. But still free. Still real. The room was quiet. No music. Just her movement. And him. Watching. This time it was different. Not because of her, but because of him. His eyes followed her carefully. His expression softened slightly. And then, it happened. A small smile. Not forced. Not controlled. Real. It didn't stay for long. But it was there. And she saw it. She stopped dancing slowly. Looked at him.
And smiled too.
Not big. Not loud. Just soft. Then she said something that stayed with him. "You didn't need me to smile." He didn't speak. He just looked at her, waiting. She continued, "You just forgot how." The words were simple, but they landed deep, because they were true. He didn't lose the ability. He didn't lose himself completely.
He just buried it.
And somehow, she found it. Not by forcing him, not by changing him, but just by being herself. Time moved forward.
Carefully.
Quietly. She got stronger, healthier,
Safer.
and for the first time, she danced without fear. No street, no crowd, no danger, just space.
And peace.
One evening, she danced again. In the same room, light coming through the window.
Soft. Warm.
He stood nearby, watching, just like before, but not the same, because this time, he smiled, quietly, gently, without realizing it, and he didn't try to stop it. Outside, the world still feared him, still whispered his name, still stepped back when he walked by. Nothing had changed there, but inside, everything had. Because the man everyone feared didn't change because of power. He changed because someone who had nothing taught him how to feel again.